Good evening. Welcome to The Big Fight. Winter is coming. If you're a Game of Thrones fan, you think about White Walkers and a war and all sorts of horrible things coming at you from the north. But if you live in North India, winter is coming has an equally scary symbolism for you, because it really means this is the time of temperature inversion. This is the time when air pollution starts to spike. This is the time when your eyes start to burn, your lungs start to hurt, and you start to choke. And then you start thinking about the impact of the air that you're breathing on your families, on little children, on babies who've just been born. And then you start to think about some of the statistics. You start thinking about the reports that you have read that a child in North India, places like Delhi, by the time that child is 5 years old, would have smoked the equivalent of 10,000 cigarettes. If that doesn't scare you, those are statistics that should scare you. Other statistics will come to your mind. A statistic which says that something like 1.2 million people, 1.2 million people die every single year in India thanks to air pollution. Now let's just try and deconstruct that. How many people does that come down to an hour? 200 people per hour, something like that, dying because of air pollution. We've started the big fight right now. By the time you end the show, 200 people will have died because of air pollution. Think about that happening in any other field. Think about there being one Elphinstone train stampede an hour. Think about a jumbo jet crashing every single day. Think about, I mean, you could just extrapolate that to anything. Every terror attack that has taken place in Kashmir over 20 years happening in 1 month in India. And that's what air pollution is doing to us. And what do we end up doing? We end up debating, we end up discussing, we end up talking about it year after year after year. 2 years ago, a prominent columnist, Gardner Harris of the New York Times, when he left India, said it's unethical to bring up your child in a city like Delhi because of the impact that air pollution is having on that child. What have we done about it? Well, we've spoken, we've talked, we've discussed. Now, first signs of action starting to be taken. We're starting to talk about what should we do about crop burning in Punjab. And on this show, I'll take you through that. What is happening on that? Why is it that no real action is taking place? What are the solutions? Now, you're having for the first time the Supreme Court banning the sale of crackers in Delhi. And that, by the way, by itself led to such a furor. A lot of people came in and said, oh, this is anti-Hindu, this is against Hindu festivals, and it's fine for children not to be allowed to breathe, but it's more important for them to be allowed to burn crackers, or words to that effect. And at the end of the day, the Supreme Court eventually had to step in, and the Supreme Court had to come in and saying it is sad that something like this is being given a communal color. And then the other things to talk about. Why is it that there's no active action being taken to prevent construction dust? Why is it that we are not having proper sweeping of the roads to make sure that that dust doesn't come and get held up in the air? Why is it that we don't have tougher emission norms on vehicles? A range of questions need to be answered, because at the end of the day, air pollution is not just about crop burning, although it is partly about that. It's not just about Diwali firecrackers, although it's partly about that. It's about a plethora of reasons, and all of them must be addressed. And we should have been doing little else over the last 2 or 3 months than sitting and actively trying to figure out how we can prevent 1 million people from dying every year thanks to air pollution. We've got a range of experts with us on the program today who are hopefully going to come and tell us what is happening, what should be happening, and what we can actually do going forward. Starting with Anumita Roy Chaudhary. Works at the CSC, has been doing a lot of great work on air pollution, was telling me a few weeks ago that she thinks it could be better this year, but now not looking quite as confident as she once was. And we'll look at some of the data to see whether that's actually the case or not. Ashutosh from the Aam Aadmi Party is here. Delhi, one of the worst affected cities, often becomes the poster child for air pollution in India. But it should be noted, this is not just a Delhi problem. This is a problem across North India. Hundreds of millions of people are affected by this, not just the residents of Delhi. Shamsher Sharif, former Secretary General of the Rajya Sabha, former Principal Secretary Home, Government of NCT, has been leading a campaign, as have many others. One of those who have been leading a campaign to say, let's do something about this, and let's do something about this really fast. We have with us Rahul Ishwar joining us from Trivandrum, author, activist, thinks too much is being made of this entire ban on crackers, doesn't know why that ban on crackers has come in the first place, so we'll get his views on why he feels that way. Sandeep Singh joining us as well, who has similar views. And we are also going to be joined by Devinder Sharma, joining us from Chandigarh on what can actually be done to sort out this stubble burning crisis, which is unfortunately still happening in Haryana and in Punjab. And finally, great to have with us Dr. Naresh Trehan, founder chairperson Vedanta. All right, let's just first try and establish, as we have unfortunately been trying to do year after year, trying to get people to first recognize that there is a crisis. Why is it, Anumita, that we're not recognizing there's a crisis out here?
I think today you are beginning to see a lot more conversation around this. But what is not getting translated into is into public support for hard decisions. And when we're beginning to look at the numbers, and people need to understand that the last Diwali smog, which was the horrendous smog that had happened, I mean, never ever in the history we have seen that kind of levels, even higher than the level during the London smog. But that had triggered certain action in this city, which led to, because of the Supreme Court, the designing of the graded response action plan. And since then, we are beginning to see certain change. And therefore, when we're looking at the data now, it's interesting, this year, the levels are not as high as previous year. But since October 1, we have already seen an increase of about 64%. And that's where the warning bell comes in.
64% spike has already happened.
Yes.
A lot of the debate over the last week or 10 days has been Diwali firecrackers. It's important, we will discuss that, and we should discuss that. Important to remember and recognize that's not the only factor. It's a scientific fact that October, November, December, January, there is a pollution spike in North India. It is partly caused by weather factors. There's a weather inversion over places like Delhi, so the pollutants remain trapped. So what may not have been a big problem in the monsoon becomes a big problem in October, November, December. However, as she said, Diwali sometimes acts as a trigger. This, for example, is what happened last year. 283 was the figure during Dussehra, right? So 283, already this is at the poor mark. Just after Diwali, and there was talk already last year that we should try and avoid firecrackers. And by the way, in cities like Delhi and other places across North India, children have been leading that drive. Many kids just don't allow their parents to set off firecrackers anymore. I grew up loving firecrackers. I used to set them off. My kids don't allow me to set them off anymore. They say, you know, as a matter of policy, we won't do it. So anyway, but this is what happened in Diwali last year. Went to 431. Those are emergency conditions. 431 was on Diwali, and the day after Diwali, it went to 445, and then it remained for a long period of time before it started to come out. This year, the Dussehra was 198. So it's better, much better than it was last year. Now let's see what's going to happen this year, especially in places like Delhi. It might be a particular benefit because the Supreme Court has banned the bursting of firecrackers, something which actually led to quite a storm. So before I come to the others and look at it, let's just turn our attention to the storm. So first issue, the Diwali firecracker issue. Rahul, you among others have been saying this ban should not have been instituted. Why have you been saying that?
We all accept the premise that air pollution is very serious and we need to do something drastic about it. No contention regarding that. But having said that, we can have regulations, but not a blanket ban or a restriction.
Rahul, if I could just interrupt you in mid-flow, there is a difference, right? This is something where kids who are setting off firecrackers could be imperiling the life of somebody next to them. You know how many cigarettes equivalent it is if you're burning, you know, one of those things called snakes? You set them off. 446 cigarettes, that's the equivalent. Pulchudi, 200 cigarettes. People around you could be smoking that. That's the problem. And when it comes to the religious aspect of it, as many people have been pointing out, let's face it, gunpowder was only invented about 200 or 300 years ago in China, by the way. So it's not as if historically, as a cultural matter, crackers have been something always associated with Diwali. Diwali is a festival of celebration. It was celebrated by lights, by diyas, by worship, by Ganesh and Lakshmi Puja. All of those are intrinsic to it, more perhaps than crackers are. Why are you saying that the crackers are an intrinsic part of it? I mean, through most of history, they couldn't have been because gunpowder wasn't invented.
I partially concede both arguments, but it has become so assimilated to our culture that you cannot give a cultural shock one fine day. There are other occasions where people use firecrackers too. For example, December 31st, New Year, many people do burn firecrackers. So there is only ban on Diwali or during the time of Diwali.
100% agree with you. If there's a ban on the bursting of crackers during Diwali because it is adding to air pollution, I think that should be extended. You should have no bursting of crackers in North India from October till February, which are the months where the air pollution is higher. Shamshi, let me just come to you before I go to Sandeep. That's a valid point. It shouldn't only be Diwali. You should be saying no bursting of crackers on New Year's. Anybody bursting crackers, Christmas, New Year's, wedding season, all of that should be stopped because all of that's adding to air pollution. You've been running a campaign on this. Would you agree with that?
Number one, why do we have a campaign? The campaign is right to breathe. We've heard of many things. There are two basic issues if you want to live. One is water and the other is air. There's no point talking about development or anything else if you didn't have this. If there's no life, then what's it all about? So unless you have water, of which we have a severe problem, and now to that you've added air. But the issue hasn't really begun today either in Delhi or just it's a part of Delhi, as you rightly said, it's part of North India, but it's the whole country as a whole. It was way back in 1987 that people started the campaign. But today, why has it changed to this level? It has changed to this level because it has become critical. And if because of it has become critical, you can't just sit back and say, let's have another debate, let's have another solution. You cannot, you have to. There is no such thing as a failure. Failure is no longer an option.
Okay, Sandeep Singh, I'm just sticking on the cracker issue for a couple of minutes. You again are one of those who's felt that banning crackers is wrong. Supreme Court has just come out and said it is wrong to give this a communal color, and they are saddened by the fact that this has been given a communal color. How would you react to that?
Dr. Gustav Oppert, an expert in the firecrackers, has documented it that firecrackers were invented in India before China, and it was in Shukraniti. And verse 206 to 208 clearly talks about pyrokinetics. I can cite many examples like that. But having said that, you know, it's different judgments of Supreme Court which makes me look it through the prism of religion. Because I'm all for it. If 4 hours of not burning crackers on Diwali will solve the problem of Delhi's pollution, I'm all for it. But we have seen for a month's odd even couldn't solve it. I've visited various sites of the people who have filed cases, you know, different NGOs. None of them list Diwali as a reason for pollution in Delhi. They talk about power plant or transportation. So all this put together makes me look through the eyes of religious prism.
Look at the data. I mean, last year on Diwali and the day after Diwali, pollution spiked to 445. Now look, everyone loves Diwali. No one's ever going to contest that we should not be celebrating Diwali. I guess it's only this aspect of it, which is the bursting of crackers, because there is a crisis to do with air pollution, which is why this particular thing is coming up.
99% there is a pollution. Diwali may be adding that 1%, so Diwali becomes a target and we are not bothered about rest of the 99%.
No, okay, valid point. We should address the rest of the 99. On this show, we are going to do that. Everything needs to be fixed. You're not going to solve the air pollution crisis in Delhi.
1%, you know, why start with 1%?
Frankly, you've got to address all of it. You've got to stop every single thing. It's an emergency. You've got to stop all aspects of it. Rahul, just come back to you one more issue on this. Lots of NRIs have been coming in and saying, oh, this is shocking and you must allow it. And fine, it's very easy for somebody to be sitting in Seattle or somebody to be sitting in Virginia or somebody to be sitting in some beach in the Caribbean and saying it's okay, you know, Delhi should celebrate Diwali and who cares if children can't breathe anymore. You, Rahul, are sitting in Trivandrum. I envy you. You're sitting there next to the ocean, beautiful sea breezes blowing. Why don't you come out here and spend Diwali with us? And then you'll get a sense of what it really means.
I'm coming to Delhi tomorrow because our Sabarimala case is there. I concede that argument, but there is...
You're coming to Delhi tomorrow is all very well. Please tell us you're going to stay on with us till Diwali, celebrate Diwali here with the residents of Delhi. That evening, next day, stay here, walk the streets, breathe the air, and then I will concede whatever you want to say on Diwali firecrackers. Because some of us, hey, the audience banned me, we don't have a choice, we are here.
See, look at the verdicts like Jallikattu, look at, you know, waterless Holi, crackerless Diwali, noiseless Dandiya, Sabarimala, Kambala. So many verdicts came together that many people feel there is a systematic slant. I didn't raise a communal argument, I didn't equate it with Eid or Christmas because I didn't want to give it a communal spin.
Yeah.
But a section of Hindus, especially very voice powerful Hindus, feel that there is a slight systemic bias towards us,
you know,
and many verdicts are giving which are culturally a bit insensitive to Hindus.
Okay, the court did intervene in triple talaq right now, just not that long back. I've seen television channels saying what's happening about nikah halala, which is, again, those are also cultural aspects. And we've done shows out here saying that why on earth this is a cultural aspect. And by the way, the negative externalities of that are not quite as much as here. Ashutosh, is this an anti-Hindu bias to say don't burst crackers in Diwali?
I don't think it's an anti-Hindu bias in that sense, because the court has to do a duty and court is doing that duty. But the point is the court has been very, very inconsistent on this particular issue. Last year, you're giving the example of the last year. Last year, Supreme Court has banned these crackers. What they did not ban crackers bursting, they banned crackers selling. On 12th of September of last month, 12th September 2017, the same Supreme Court has vacated the stay on the ban on the sales of the crackers, and within 2-3 weeks, Supreme Court again is banning selling of the crackers. So there is an inconsistency in the Supreme Court. The point number one. The point number two: have you thought about those traders who started getting these crackers and started selling these crackers? What happened to them? All through in the last 1 month, they have prepared that they will get some money. They were already dead by demonetization, already dead by the GST, and now you are killing them by doing something like this. So Supreme Court, this order is again a knee-jerk reaction. The point number three, the most important, we are all talking about the humans. What about those animals? My dogs get mad. I have to take care of them. They have to push them, shove them in some corner.
I agree with what a lot of you are saying. Sandeep, let me get you in here. You need a more coherent policy, and at an emergency level, we need to handle this. Sandeep, you were trying to say something.
When you raise that triple talaq, I just wanted to say the court said, though it's not mentioned in Quran, it's a 1400-year practice. So they didn't give a verdict. They just put a 6 months ban and pass the buck to the government. So the Supreme Court has been, as Ashutosh says, has been inconsistent. They are very sensitive to other religion, except when it comes to Hindus.
Okay. I do not agree with him.
Sandeep,
just trying to communalize the issue.
Sandeep, I noticed you are in Mumbai. I was just asking Rahul this question. Would you like to come and spend Diwali here, the day there and the day after?
This year I do plan to, as a mark of protest.
Oh, you're going to come to Delhi? I'm so happy to hear that. Come. And, then I think is when we really get a sense of it. All right, the point of a coherent policy can't be flip-flops. We're already seeing some people saying as a mark of protest, as you rightly said, there are people who are actively planning this year on Diwali. They're going to buy crackers from elsewhere, come here, distribute them for free among children to say, burst them.
What the experts have told us is horrific. I mean, we are talking about something like, I don't want to raise the levels, but we are talking about something horrific as Hiroshima. Because you're talking about deaths which are slow, inevitable deaths. Actually, now, having said all that,
just to be clear on this, 1 million people dying in a year because of air pollution, worse than Hiroshima. Not that many people didn't die in Hiroshima.
So give it a thought. And
so
give it a thought.
That's actually something to keep in mind. And more people are going to die of air pollution in India this year than died in Hiroshima.
That's why I say let's not.
My data is not completely correct. It might be Hiroshima plus Nagasaki, for all you know.
But that's why I say. What about the Supreme Court inconsistency?
Yes, that's
it's a valid
3 weeks
point.
back. You're vacated.
No, we come to policy.
Actually, I didn't want to turn. I want to get.
And not banning the busting of the crackers, but selling of the crackers.
Okay.